Hello everyone. In this lecture, I am going to introduce you to the subject of pathology and we are going to discuss about cell injury. What is this subject of pathology means? If we look into the history, organ pathology was first introduced by Morgagni, who was an Italian scientist. Virchow, who is considered as father of modern pathology, introduced the cellular pathology. So how this term pathology was established? The word path or pathos means suffering or disease, and logi or logos means study. So this in short means study of disease. In this subject we are related to the science behind the disease, how the particular disease exactly happens and why it happens. In human pathology, in this subject, we are going to discuss pathology in main two headings. One is general pathology and one is systemic pathology. In general pathology, we are going to discuss the general principles of disease, and in systemic pathology, we are going to discuss each system and the diseases associated with that system, that specific organ. Okay, so we will discuss individual system and the diseases associated with that particular system. Then what are the subdivisions of pathology? First is histopathology, also called as surgical pathology, when it is associated with biopsy specimens, and forensic pathology and autopsy when it is associated with study of the autopsy specimens or post-mortem specimens. Cytopathology is study of cells in which we can study exfoliative cytology in the form of FNAC or fluid cytology. Then comes hematology, which is study of the blood cells. Clinical pathology, here we can study the clinical specimens like urine examination. Molecular pathology, immunology, experimental pathology, these are the recently introduced subsectors of pathology where newer modalities like electron microscopy have been introduced. Newer techniques like fluorescence microscopy are introduced, with which we can study the molecular basis of the disease. Then geographic pathology. Now we'll start discussing cell injury. So for any disease to happen, basically there is need to the cell to get injured, and this injury will be presenting itself into the different disease forms. Cell injury is defined as variety of stresses a cell encounters as a result of internal or external environmental changes. Okay, remember this, there should be stress or injury which can arise from inside the cell, or it could be from the outside the cell. Cell injury is common to all pathogenic processes, and cell injury results from disruption of one or more of the cellular components that maintain the cell viability. Okay, so for cell to become viable, to cell to become function, there are lots of things. The structure has to be normal, the chemical constituent has to be normal, the function has to be normal. If there is disruption in any of these things, any of these structures or functions, then there will be cell injury and development of disease. Injury at one point induces a cascade of effects. Because of one thing, the next thing happens and subsequently leads to cell death. Sometimes there is adaptation by the cell. Okay, so sometimes what happens is there is cell injury, and to sustain that injury, cell changes itself. This is called as cellular adaptation. When that injury is beyond the adaptation, there is an actual injury to the cell which could be reversible or irreversible. So here in this pictorial presentation you can see that initially the normal tissue, when it is exposed to abnormal stimulus in any form, like it could be increased functional demand, there could be environmental changes inside or outside, there could be injury because of anything, then the cell will have adaptive response. Okay, the adaptive response could be in any form. The cell may be increase in size or increase in number. There could be combination of increase in size and number, and the function of the tissue will sustain. Okay, so these are adaptive responses, and cell or the tissue will become stable. And when you remove the cause, or when you remove the actual stimulus which has induced those changes, there will be end of abnormality, and the tissue can become normal in size and shape, or normal in function. So what is the etiology of cell injury? Okay, there is a huge list of etiologies or causes of cell injury. One is hypoxia or ischemia, physical agents, chemical and drugs, microbial agents, immunological agents, nutritional derangement, psychological stresses, iatrogenic causes, and idiopathic causes. First, we'll discuss about hypoxic injury, which is very common. The word hypoxia means there is lack of oxygen or decreased oxygen. Okay, so with examples we will try to understand what is hypoxia. First is cerebral infarct. Okay, cerebrum is a part of brain, as you all know. When there is decreased blood supply to the cerebrum, this part of cerebral parenchyma undergoes infarction. When similar thing happens, myocardial infarction happens when there is decreased blood supply to the heart muscles, and there is myocardial infarction leading to heart attack. You must have heard of this term, heart attack. Renal atrophy can occur because of decreased blood supply to kidneys. The kidneys become smaller in size. Some infectious diseases, some organisms can cause injury to the cell. Okay, for example, tuberculosis. The tuberculosis bacteria, they cause damage to that organ like lung or lymph node or intestine, and there will be injury to the cell and development of disease. Similarly, actinomycosis, candidiasis caused by Candida albicans, even the herpes, which is viral infection, all these organisms, infectious etiologies can lead to irreversible damage to the cell, leading to development of disease. Physical injury like thermal burn or traumatic ulcers, okay, it is not just the infection, but even the physical agents can lead to damage to the cell and injury to the cell, and there will be development of the disease. Chemical or drug injury, you must have heard of aspirin burn, which can happen due to ingestion of aspirin. So aspirin is a chemical, or it is a drug, and because of that there could be injury to the cell. Now moving on to the pathogenesis of cell injury. So the cell injury depends on the type of the insult which has happened to the cell, the duration of the etiology, and severity of the injurious agent. It means that for how long the injurious agent is being there, what type of injurious agent is there, the pathogenesis depends on that. It also depends on the type, status, and adaptability of target cell. Like some of the cells, they are very much fragile, and because of even the smallest kind of injury, they can die. And there are certain cells which can sustain a large amount of stress or large amount of the injurious agents. Sometimes it is also depending on underlying intracellular phenomenon. For example, mitochondrial damage or cell wall damage or free radicals, they also have a role in development of the cell injury. Morphological consequences, that is ultrastructural changes, swelling, whatever changes are happening in this cell, they also play a very important role in the pathogenesis of cell injury. So how this ischemic and hypoxic injury happens? Okay, in irreversible and reversible cell injury, there are different kind of pathogenesis happening. Okay, when the cell injury is not very high and cell can revert back to its normal function, it is called as reversible cell injury. Okay, what happens in reversible cell injuries? There is decreased generation of cellular ATP. ATP is required for the normal function of the cell. ATP is the energy unit of the cell. So when there is decreased generation of cellular ATP, there is ischemic or hypoxic injury. The intracellular lactic acidosis is increased, leading to nuclear clumping. Okay, there is also damage to the plasma membrane pump, which is ATP dependent sodium potassium pump and calcium pump. So these plasma membrane pumps, they help maintain the ionic balance inside and outside the cell to normal. Then reduced protein synthesis because of dispersed ribosomes. So remember that oxygen is required for the normal functioning of the cell. So whenever there is decreased oxygen because of hypoxia, then there will be decreased production of the energy for cell to sustain. When this injury becomes long term, then it becomes irreversible. So when there is permanent damage to the mitochondria, which is a source of energy for the cell, the cell injury becomes irreversible. There is activation of phospholipase membrane damage. Okay, phospholipase is an enzyme which lyses or which disrupts the membrane. Also, there are proteases which are present inside the cell. These are protein lysing enzymes which dissolves the cytoskeleton. There is activation of endonucleases. These endonucleases are also lytic enzymes which lyse or which destroys the nuclear material. Along with damage caused because of ischemia, the reperfusion of the blood supply to the ischemic organ can induce the ischemic reperfusion injury, and it can happen because of free radicals. Okay, so because of free radicals which are generated after reperfusion, there could be free radical mediated injury. So there is, depending on the extent of the injury and the sustainability of the cell, the consequences could be from ischemia to reversible injury, that is, there is not much of a damage and it is reversible and cell gains its normal function. From ischemia to reperfusion injury, and from ischemia to irreversible injury. Okay, so this happens because there is a calcium overload, there is increased lipid peroxidation of cell membrane, there is generation of the free radicals, oxygen radicals, there is subsequent inflammatory reaction. Neutrophils utilize that oxygen and gives free radicals. So there is more and more excess number of free oxygen free radicals which are responsible for the tissue damage. What is the pathogenesis of chemical injury? There could be direct cytotoxic effect, okay, or there could be conversion of reactive toxic metabolites. Okay, the substance or the chemical as such can damage the cell, or it can convert itself into the toxic metabolites, and then those metabolites can kill the cell. For example, the CCl4, which is a toxic metabolite generated when there is acetaminophen poisoning. In physical injury, take an example of ionizing radiation. Okay, those radiation particles can damage the cell membrane and DNA. Then we're moving on towards the cellular adaptations. Okay, as I said before, cellular adaptations are happening in the cell to sustain the injury. Okay, first is atrophy or hypertrophy, that is decreased or increase the size of the cell. Hyperplasia is increased number of the cell. Metaplasia is change from one type of the cell to another type, and dysplasia changed phenotypic differentiation. Okay, the definitions are important for you to understand. We'll try to understand with examples now. What is atrophy? Atrophy is a decrease in the size of the cell. Okay, this atrophy can happen physiologically and pathologically. Physiologically, it is kind of aging process. So as the age increases, there is atrophy of brain, and brain becomes smaller in size. Even the gonads, as the age increases, there is decrease in the size of the gonads. Pathological atrophy is seen when there is a starvation, when the food supply is less, then there is atrophy of the multiple organs. Ischemia, when there is decrease in the blood supply, for example, to the kidney, if there is ischemic kidney, then the kidney becomes smaller in size. Disuse atrophy is when you are not using particular organ, there is disuse atrophy. For example, atrophy of plastered limb. Okay, if the limb is kept in the plaster for a very long time, then there is atrophy of the skeletal muscles, and limb looks more thinner. Neuropathic atrophy, for example, in motor neuron disease, when the nerve supply is not proper, when it is diseased, then there is atrophy of that particular organ which is supplied by that deceased motor neuron. Endocrine atrophy is atrophy caused because of decreased hormone supply to the organ. For example, there is atrophy of thyroid or adrenal if they don't get proper stimulus from hypothalamus. Here you can see on the left hand side, the upper picture shows adrenal gland. On the left hand side, you can see that there is a nice cortex and medulla, but on right hand side, the adrenal gland is smaller in size with atrophic appearance. The lower part, you can see H&E stained picture of the muscle. On the left hand side, the muscles are normal. Okay, they are large, pink, the nucleus is shifted towards the one side, but on the right hand side, there are some atrophic muscle in the center which are labeled as A. You can see the muscle are very small in size because of atrophy. Then comes hypertrophy. Okay, hypertrophy is increase in the size of the cell. Hyper is more. So hypertrophy is increase in the size of the cell. Physiologically, it can happen with the pregnant uterus. Pathologically, it can happen with hypertrophy of cardiac muscle in case of hypertension. Okay, hypertrophy of smooth muscle, you can see it in cardiac achalasia or pyloric stenosis. Hypertrophy of skeletal muscle, especially seen in athletes when they use the skeletal muscles a lot. Compensatory hypertrophy can be seen in nephrectomy on one side. So one kidney is removed, the other kidney will show compensatory hypertrophy. On the left upper side, you can see cut section of uterus. The left lower side shows normal sized uterus compared to the pregnant uterus on the right side, which is showing hypertrophy. Okay, there is increase in the size of the cell leading to increase in the size of the organ. In the lower right hand side, you can see H&E stains picture of skeletal muscle. The left side is normal, right side, you can compare to the left side, you can see that the size of the muscle is increased. So this is definitely hypertrophy. Then what is hyperplasia? Hyperplasia is temporary increase in the number of parenchymal cells. Here is an example of hyperplasia. This is the section of endometrium where you can see on the left hand side normal endometrium consisting of endometrial glands. The round oval structures which you can see are the endometrial glands, and in between is the stroma. When there is hyperplasia of the endometrial glands, you can see on the right hand side there is increase in number of the glands. Okay, so there is hyperplasia, increase in the number of the endometrial gland cells, and the stroma is reduced. Moving on towards the next topic, which is necrosis. By definition, necrosis is rapid pathological death of a cell or a group of cells in the midst of living tissue caused by release of hydrolytic enzymes by the cell. Okay, so remember, necrosis is very important topic and get a question on that, and definition is very important. First, try to understand what is the meaning of necrosis. So whenever there is an irreversible damage to the cell it is going to die. So death of the cell happens in two ways. One is by apoptosis and one is by necrosis. Apoptosis is programmed cell death, which is a strictly regulated program for any cell to die. when the injury to the cell is irreversible. Okay, so this and in contrast to this, necrosis is also a form of cell death in which there is activation of hydrolytic enzymes by the cell and there is a lysis of cell. So by definition, it is death of a cell or group of cells, okay, when there is irreversible damage to the cell, which is caused by release of hydrolytic enzymes by the cell. What are different types of necrosis? Okay, the morphologically necrosis can look different in different types. First is coagulated necrosis, which is the commonest. Caseous necrosis, the word caseous means cheese-like. Colligative or liquefactive necrosis, in which there is liquefied pus formation. Fat necrosis, which happens in the fatty tissue, and fibrinoid necrosis. How do we identify if any cell has undergone necrosis? So what are the criteria to say whether the cell has undergone necrosis? You can see there are changes in the nucleus. As you know, when there is irreversible damage to the cell, cell is going to die. So these are the structural changes which you can see when cell is dying. Normally the nucleus is stained blue by H&E stain, but when the cell is dying, when the cell is undergoing necrosis, you will see different types of nuclear changes like pycnosis, karyorrhexis and karyolysis. What are these changes? Karyolysis is lysis of the chromatin material. There is nuclear fading because of lytic enzymes. Pycnosis is nucleus shrinkage. The nucleus becomes small in size, condensed in size. It's called as pycnosis. Karyorrhexis is fragmentation of the nuclear material. So with karyolysis or pycnosis or karyorrhexis, there is nuclear dissolution and the cell becomes anuclear. Okay, if you remember from physiology, you know that any cell to function, you need to have a nucleus. If the nucleus is dying because of karyolysis, pycnosis or karyorrhexis, the cell is not going to live and cell is going to form a tomb of itself. Okay, you will see only the outline, you will see a little bit of its original cytoplasm, but there is no nucleus and cell is not at all functioning. What are the general causes of necrosis? Ischemia, which leads to coagulated type of necrosis. Ischemia, that is what is called as decreased blood supply to the cell. So because of this decreased blood supply, there is hypoxia, that is reduced oxygen, and there is reduced nutrients. Some physical agents like trauma or heat or ionizing radiation, they also can cause necrosis. Chemicals and biological agents like infectious agents. Deficiency of essential metabolites like vitamins. Abnormal immune reactions like hypersensitivity and autoimmunity can also lead to a fibrinoid type of necrosis. First important is coagulative necrosis. So grossly, as the name suggests, coagulative. So the appearance of cell, it becomes like coagulated cell. There is destruction of the cellular microenvironment, but the outline of the cell is maintained. The affected part, if you see the gross specimen, the specimen as such, you will see that affected part is swollen, firm, it is dull, dry and opaque. Okay, there is increased permeability of capillaries, which allows leakage of plasma thromboplastin like substances liberated by the dying cells, which coagulate the plasma and tissue fluids. Okay, this is what is happening at the tissue level. So these cells, they are caught in this firm coagulum. Okay? So the capillaries are leaky, the fibrin is coming out of capillaries, there is coagulum formation and the cells are trapped in that coagulum, and because of that it gives firm consistency. Okay, so coagulative necrosis is commonly seen with hypoxia or ischemic damage. So it is restricted to a certain part of the tissue, and you can see junction of normal and infarcted area. So what happens is the normal tissue will try to survive, try to help the adjacent cells which are dying because of decreased oxygen. So there will be proliferation of the capillaries at the junction of normal and infarcted zone. So you will see distinction between these two zones, and there is red or dark colored line which is called as zone of hyperemia. At this zone of hyperemia, there is increased capillary proliferation. Microscopically, the structure as such or architecture is well preserved, but the structural proteins are denatured. These denatured proteins will prevent the proteolysis in the cell, and you will see only ghost cell or tombstones of the original cell. Okay, so you can imagine that nucleus is gone, and inside the cell only the outer structure is maintained, but the cellular details are lost. The cellular organelles like mitochondria, Golgi apparatus are all gone. Junction of normal and infarcted zone will show congested capillaries, as I explained before, and inflammatory reaction, and this junction is called as zone of hyperemia. Here you can see on the right hand side there is cut section of kidney. The left half of kidney, can you see on the top there is yellowish wedge shaped infarct. The base of infarct is on the periphery and the apex is towards the hilum, because the blood vessel which is present at the hilum has blocked, and because of that the wedge shaped area supplied by that particular artery is showing infarction. Similarly, on the right side you can see there are whitish cortical, subcortical zones of infarction. So remember that infarcts are wedge shaped because of this reason. On the left lower side you can see on the microscopic picture where there are tubules visible on the lower left side. The nucleus is also seen in the blue colored nuclei, but in the central part there is no microscopic details of those cells are seen. Here is another example of infarction. Here is cut section of heart, where in the left ventricle you can see infarction in the form of the pale white firm area. So here is myocardial infarction. On the right hand side, the blue dots which you can see are the nuclei of the myocardial cells, but in between it is showing smudgy appearance. There is loss of nuclei because those cells have undergone infarction. Then comes the next type of necrosis, which is called as liquefactive necrosis. Okay, liquefactive necrosis is a necrotic focus that liquefies and cavitates in the center. It occurs when the rate of necrosis is faster than that of repair. Okay, and it is produced by ischemia of the tissue, which is rich in fluids, lipids, and enzymes. So it is particularly common in those kind of tissues like brain, which is rich in lipids. So in infarct of brain, you will see that there is liquefactive necrosis in the center, and it is surrounded by the fibrous capsule, like an abscess. Okay, in the abscess there is central liquefactive necrosis in the form of pus, and there is fibrous wall. So here is an example. On the left hand side you can see cut section of cerebrum, and left upper side you can see there is an liquefactive necrosis or abscess cavity. On the right hand side it is a microscopic picture of the same. On the right hand side there are necrotic inflammatory cells, and on the left hand side there is the fibrous capsule. Here's one more example in which the liver, cut section of liver is showing an abscess, which is an example of a liquefactive necrosis. Here is microscopic picture of the same, in which with arrow there are shown amoeba, trophozoites of amoeba. So amoebic abscess is another example of liquefactive necrosis. So in the center there are amoebic trophozoites, lots of inflammatory cells and necrosis. So this is liquefactive necrosis surrounded by the fibrous capsule and inflammatory cells. Then comes caseous necrosis. Okay, the meaning of word caseous is cheese-like. It is distinctive form of necrosis which is commonly encountered with tuberculosis. Grossly, it looks yellow, opaque, granular, and friable. Microscopically, you will see there is loss of architecture. It is amorphous, granular, and have eosinophilic appearance. You can see basophilic granular nuclear dust in between these, and the necrotic tissue is surrounded by granulomatous inflammation. You will learn about granulomatous inflammation in subsequent lectures. So here is the microscopic picture of the same, in which you can see in the peripheral part of the lymph node, this is the cut section of lymph node, there are these granulomas with giant cell, and in the center the pink structure or pink amorphous granular material is caseous necrosis. Here is one more example, cut section of lung, and you can see in the center there is hilar lymph node showing yellowish cheesy caseous necrosis. On the right hand side it is the microscopic picture showing on the top area caseous necrosis, pink eosinophilic granular acellular material surrounded by epithelioid cells and the inflammatory cells. Here is another example of lymph node, cut section of lymph node showing typical caseous necrosis. Then next is the fat necrosis. Fat necrosis happens in fatty tissue, as the name suggests. There is release of, for example, in case of pancreas, there is release of enzymes from the pancreas into the parenchyma, adjacent tissue, and or blood due to chronic pancreatitis or trauma to the pancreas, or in the breast or subcutaneous tissue. So these enzymes which are released in the parenchyma, they cause lysis of the fat or destruction of the fat around the pancreas or wherever in the fatty tissue there is a damage. So because of that, there is hydrolysis of the fat and destruction of the cell membrane of the adipose tissue, and fatty acids which are formed after that combines with calcium to form a chalky white areas, and this process is known as saponification of fat. Okay, saponification means soap formation. Soap formation, normally soap is the combination of salt and fat, right, fatty acid. So here similar thing is happening. Fat from the adipose tissue after damage is released, converted into fatty acid, and combines with calcium to form a soap-like structures, basophilic structures, which are seen on the fat necrosis. So it is a saponification of fat. Grossly, you will see that there are dull, opaque, yellow-white foam nodules, which you can see on the right-hand side. This is the mesentery, where there are different foci of fatty necrosis seen. On the lower part, it is the cut section of pancreas, which is showing whitish plaque-like areas because of fat necrosis. Microscopically, the adipose tissue will show shadow-like outline of necrotic fat cells. So as we have discussed, in necrosis there is only outline of the cell is maintained, then there is loss of nuclei, loss of cytoplasm, and cytoplasm is opaque eosinophilic granular, which is normally clear in case of adipocytes. It is surrounded by hyperemic vessels and leukocytic infiltration, because extracellular fat is irritant, and to eat that fat there is foreign body giant cell reaction. Okay, the fatty acid can combine with calcium, as we discussed before, causing calcification, which is shown in the lower part of lower microscopic picture by arrow. The basophilic structure which you can see is the calcium deposition. Okay, so in the upper microscopic picture you can see on the right hand side it's a normal structure, but on the left hand side there are these ghost fat cells, which is fat necrosis. Fibrinoid necrosis. Okay, fibrinoid kind of necrosis is common in active lesions of collagen and vascular diseases like rheumatic fever, rheumatoid arthritis, SLE, or malignant hypertension. It is classically seen in the arteriolar walls. The affected area is loose the affected area loses the architecture to contain the blotchy homogeneous acidophilic material. On the lower microscopic pictures, you can see that there is arterial wall on the left hand side and showing pink homogeneous fibrinoid necrosis, and on the right hand side there is again tiny arteriole, the wall of which is been thickened by deposition of this pink eosinophilic fibrinoid necrosis. Now you must know the differences between necrosis and apoptosis. As I have said before, apoptosis is a programmed cell death, and necrosis is happening because of different types of injurious agents. So the cell size is reduced, or there is shrinkage of cell in apoptosis, whereas the cells are enlarged and there is swelling in necrosis. The changes in the necrosis we have seen, these are pycnosis, karolysis and karyorrhexis, whereas in apoptosis there is fragmentation of the nucleosome in the nuclear DNA into nucleosome size fragments. The plasma membrane is disrupted in case of necrosis, but in apoptosis there are tiny structures which are plasma membrane covered. These are released from the damaged cell, so cell membrane is intact. The cellular contents are intact in apoptosis and they are released in the form of those tiny apoptotic bodies, whereas in necrosis there is enzymatic digestion and these cellular contents may leak out of the cell, because of which there could be inflammation around these necrotic cells, whereas there is no inflammation in case of apoptosis. The physiologic or pathologic role, if you consider necrosis, is invariably it is pathological, because there is inflammation and there is irreversible cell injury, whereas apoptosis it could be physiological as well as pathological, but physiological death of the cell a lot of time happens with the apoptosis. Okay. So here you can see that the normal cell, when it dies, it can die with necrosis or it can die with apoptosis. So on the left hand side there is necrotic cell. When you can see the cell is disrupted, there is enzymatic digestion and leakage of cellular contents to outside, there is inflammation around this cell, whereas in apoptosis the cell is dying because with formation of membrane covered apoptotic bodies. These apoptotic bodies are eaten up by different phagocytic cells. Okay, phagocytic cells are the cleaning cells, like monocytes or macrophages. These cells will eat those tiny apoptotic bodies and clear the debris out. The next is gangrene. Gangrene by definition is massive necrosis with superadded putrefaction. Okay, this is the definition of necrosis. Here the necrosis is so massive that repair even with fibrosis is not possible. So whatever dead portion which has undergone the gangrene, it can cast off naturally, or you need to amputate the same with surgery. What are different types of gangrenes? One is most common dry gangrene, which is age associated, so also called as senile gangrene, Buerger's disease. Second is moist gangrene or wet gangrene, which is commonly seen with diabetic foot or gangrene of bowel. Gas gangrene is again special type of gangrene which is seen with infection in wet gangrene with Clostridium bacteria. And traumatic gangrene can present as dry and moist or gas gangrene. Grossly, the whole limb, foot or one of the finger, whatever structure is affected, will show you this kind of changes. Bowel loop, okay, multiple centimeter bowel loop can also be involved. The part which is affected by gangrene will show you discoloration, which is dark brown, greenish brown or black color, and this black color is due to alteration of hemoglobin in the blood, which is trapped in that part. Okay. The putrefaction causes decomposition of proteins with production of foul smelling substances and gas causing crepitation on palpation. In gas gangrene, sugar are also fermented to produce the gas. So this gas, whatever is formed, is trapped in that particular tissue. So you should know the differences between dry gangrene and wet gangrene. So dry gangrene is commonly seen with limbs. Wet gangrene can be seen in both limbs as well as in the bowel. The dry gangrene will show you mummification of the dry part. Okay, it becomes dark black in color and it becomes dry and shrinked. Whereas in wet gangrene it is swollen and moist. Dry gangrene has less putrefaction as compared to wet gangrene, and wet gangrene will show you crepitus because of production of gas by the bacteria. It spreads very quickly, the wet gangrene, and there is no line of demarcation, whereas the line of demarcation is present in the dry gangrene. Dry gangrene is commonly caused because of arterial obstruction, whereas venous obstruction can be the cause for wet gangrene. The tissue contains little fluid and fat as compared to the wet gangrene in case of dry gangrene, and pathogens are absent. The prognosis is relatively better in case of dry gangrene than in wet gangrene. So here is an example of dry gangrene. The toe of the foot is showing blackish discoloration of the toe which has undergone dry gangrene, and there is at the base you can see there is line of demarcation. Here is an example of wet gangrene where the whole loop of the intestine is showing blackish discoloration. So here is an example of wet gangrene. Another important is gas gangrene, which is called by bacterial exotoxins, specifically by the Clostridial species which are found in the soil and other anaerobes like bacteroids. So these organisms, they enter in the wound and subsequently proliferate in the necrotic tissue and secrete powerful exotoxins that destroy the tissue and generate the gas. So here is the clinical picture where you can see there is on the sole of the foot there is a vesicle containing gas. So this is an example of gas gangrene, and the microscopically it will show you the skeletal muscle, and those white spaces which you can see in between are the spaces created by the gas in the tissue. So that is all about the introduction to pathology and cell injury.